If you want fast, noticeable fat loss, you need to ignore these rules that most people follow. The 500 calorie deficit. This seems to be the holy grail of fat loss. Real quick maths lesson here. There's 7,700 calories in a kilo of body fat. Now the rates of weight loss aren't perfect here because there's water retention, etc. that goes into this number. But for you to lose a kilo of body fat and see it on the scale, and you're on a 500 calorie deficit every day, it's gonna take you over 2 weeks to lose a kilo. How depressing is that? Like, it doesn't interest me whatsoever. I think it would do far better starting off on a 750 up to a 1,000 calorie daily deficit. Again, there's a lot of nuance here. Starting body fat percentage is important. Starting overall body weight is important, and that will dictate whereabouts you land in that 750 to 1,000 calorie range. The only time, caveat, the only time I would not look at starting someone in this level of calorie deficit was if they were a really small, light, petite person, male or female, doesn't matter, sort of 60 or 55 kilos or below, and they are very sedentary. That's when I probably wouldn't start with such a big deficit, simply because they just don't have the calories to play with. Next up is the 80-20 rule. So this is where 80% of your calories come from minimally processed whole foods. And then there's 20% that comes from fun foods, more flexible, junk food effectively. Look, everyone's wired differently, but I've found with myself and a lot of the people that I work with that to get some decent fat loss results, you need to put the blinkers on a little bit. So why try and crowbar so much shite into your diet that's potentially going to prolong the process? Yes, all you need for weight loss is a calorie deficit, but I definitely think it is worth your while giving more of your calories, which are limited anyway, to more nutritious, nutrient-dense whole foods that are gonna support what you're doing a hell of a lot more. And I think psychologically, it's far easier to just remove the mental arithmetic of thinking, fucking hell, how am I gonna fit in this 300 calorie brownie if I'm aiming for 150 grams of protein and these are my carbs for the day. You know, it's just one less thing to think about if you can just say, nah, I'm not gonna have that packet of crisps. Nah, I'm not gonna have dessert. Nah, I'm not gonna put 2 dollops of Nutella on my toast in the morning. Just saying no is way easier. And yes, it's not as fun, but come on, it's fat loss. It's meant to be a little bit more restrictive. And I think we're a little bit scared of saying, actually, no, you could do with a little bit less shit in your diet. Nah, you don't need as much random snacking. So I think this 80-20 rule, whilst you're in a deficit, isn't that helpful. It doesn't mean that you can't ever have these foods ever again, but I definitely think whilst you're in a fat loss phase, just limit it as much as possible. And slow and steady is healthier. Says who? Unless you are someone who is struggling with disordered eating, eating disorders, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video anyway. And this video is not meant for you, but that requires its own treatment path anyway. And potentially if you're someone who is very emotionally charged around foods and it kind of dictates your mood throughout the day, then yeah, potentially a slower approach might work. But I think aside from that, the vast majority of us, especially if we have a solid relationship with food, we don't mind putting the blinkers on, slow and steady sucks. And getting in a fat loss phase, doing it really fucking well and getting out as soon as possible is so motivating, and I can't express to you how important it is to kind of manipulate the motivation that you have. You know, for me last year when I went on that fat loss phase just before my wedding, it was so encouraging. Every single time I took progress photos every week, seeing my abs coming through more, my chest was becoming more defined, like all of these things were like, fucking hell, this process is really working. Keep on going. How can you make last week better? How can you repeat the things that worked? Seeing such rapid results was probably 95% of the reason I stuck to it. Even on the days where it was 11 PM and I was out doing 20k steps, even on the days where I was a little bit hungrier. But this is the most important thing. It is not going to last forever. So if you can sort of manipulate your motivation and your efforts within this really short burst of time, you can get some fucking phenomenal results. And let me put this into perspective for you. This was my starting point. If I had done the 500 calorie deficit a day, this is where I would have ended up at the end of the 8 weeks. But no, I pushed the boat out. I pushed towards a 1,000 calorie deficit a day. I said no to that 80-20 approach. And instead I ended up here. So if you are someone who is about to go into a fat loss phase, or maybe you've been on one and you just haven't quite got the results that you've wanted, maybe it's time to go a little bit more aggressive with it. And if you have no idea about a starting point for this, go to the link in the comments, fill in a couple of details for the body blueprint. It will give you a starting point with recommended calories and protein targets. And it will also give you an example of what kind of training plan you should be following, and even a free example session to make sure that your next move when it comes to fat loss is the right one.